When I arrived to Jacksonville, North Carolina in the December of 1995, I was a young naval officer and I was pumped up. Getting acclimated to the new area, I was taking full advantage of interacting with people, just kind of giving me a lay of the land. But literally within the first couple of weeks, I got a message that let me know that racism may not always change, but sometimes it changes signs in terms of how it's displayed. And it was this stark warning that I got that changed how I moved greatly. For those of you who've never served in the military, it's not uncommon that when you get to a new duty station that you want to get acclimated to the area. So what happens is that usually when you're the new officer or new enlisted, you're going to probably run into people who are going to take it upon themselves to let you know the lay of the land, let you know where the safe spots are, the dangerous spots are, place where you can go shop, get groceries, whether you can go get cars, whatever the case may be. So, of course, when I found myself in Jacksonville, North Carolina in December of 1995, I went through this similar experience where everyone was eager to provide me insight so that I have a better idea as to how to effectively navigate the area. Interestingly enough, though, when I was there within the first couple of weeks, I ran into a senior non-commissioned officer, another black senior non-commissioned officer. I was a young lieutenant myself, and he came up to me and he asked me a very simple question. He said, "Do you have a car and do you drive around?" And when I said yes, he then came and said something very interesting to me. He said to me, "When you are driving through this one particular county here in North Carolina, make sure you drive the speed limit." Now, I drove through places before, so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I've dealt with speed traps. I understand where you go through certain towns, you got to be careful because local police are looking to try to get you with speeding tickets. So in my mind, I'm thinking it's no big deal. He took it a step further. He said in recent years, within the last decade or so, this particular county had a sign that literally said, "This county, home of the Ku Klux Klan." When he shared that statement with me, it hit hard because you got to remember, for the most part, and I've talked about this in a lot of different videos, there is this presumption that once we got past the 70s and we moved to this integrated, desegregated society, that a lot of the institutional and atrocities related to racism we'd like to believe is in the past. We do recognize that there were some remnants of it, meaning there were some people who were still holding on to this perception or these bigotry beliefs. But as a whole, collectively, we really wanted to believe that we were moving forward as a country. And considering this was 1995, this is about a quarter of a century removed, 25 years removed from pretty much when the last major pieces of legislation came through with regards to this. But it was interesting that that was the point that he wanted me to be aware of, because he wanted me to be mindful of the fact that, hey, listen, there are parts of this country where those attitudes are still prevalent. And the fact that there was a sign that literally lauded a particular group and was only recently removed, he wanted me to be mindful of the fact that there was still an area that if you are not careful, you may put yourself in harm's way because there were still hostilities that were present. But it's important for you to remember, I didn't just merely rely solely on what he said. I didn't want to be like one person. What I found is that when I was speaking to other officers, other enlisted and non-commissioned officers, and other civilians, all black people of color, and I asked them a simple question about this particular county. I said, "Had you heard about this particular county?" They all echoed the same thing. Make sure you drive the speed limit. And it wasn't that they were telling me that I was going to be harmed. It wasn't that they were telling me that I better not do this or I'm going to be in trouble. They were just telling me from a safety standpoint that I needed to be mindful of the fact that this particular county, because of that reputation, may put yourself in harm's way if something like that were to happen. So do not open yourself up for that possibility. So when you go through this county, make sure you drive the speed limit. Here's the part that often gets lost in translation, because a lot of people want us to talk about where we have moved forward as a country, and they hate hearing about these stories because they think you're drudging up the past. It was important for me to share that this wasn't really about scaring me. This wasn't about telling me that, oh my gosh, these people are still in 1940s. This was about awareness. Because as I've said in multiple videos, remember, even though the laws changed and the institutions changed, the hearts and minds of people didn't change overnight. So there were still people who still had hostilities against people of color. So for this instance, they were telling me these things as a sense of awareness, so that I would be cognizant of the fact that I was moving into an area that had this reputation, And even though nothing may happen, don't put yourself in harm's way. This is what it was like during the Generation X years going forward. We had to learn, especially from engaging with our peers, where those places were that could potentially be hostile. And I cannot stress this enough. This was not about telling us that we needed to be scared. This was not about telling us that we needed to avoid. This was not telling us that we needed to be paranoid. It was telling us that we needed to be conscious, aware, and keep our head on a swivel so that you don't put yourself in harm's way. One of the reasons why I wrote Traveling While Black, Generation X, was that I wanted people to understand that as we moved into this period of time where the institutions, the laws, and the structure of racism had been altered as a result of the laws, but the hearts and minds hadn't fully, was I wanted people to understand what it was like to move in a space where you knew the law said one thing, but you weren't sure about the attitudes of the others. So you had to be mindful. And this was reminiscent of my time period. Trust me when I tell you, for our baby boomers and older generation, they were used to being told that these places were outwardly hostile. But keep in mind, for us, my generation, we weren't raised in that culture where every place we went to had a degree of outward hostility. So if we didn't have people who shared with us those places, we may have found ourselves in those particular instances not fully appreciating the fact that we were now moving into a space where our personal well-being may be in jeopardy.